What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode 19. 19 episodes in. I feel like I'm really found my groove, kind of got a good pace going, though now that we're into the summer, and summer's here, I feel like I'm constantly getting distracted with, trying to, take the family on vacation or wanting to be outside, and as I'll talk about here in a moment, my backyard and chores you got to do around the house, I guess. And if you're a homeowner, you know all about that stuff. But I want to thank you all for tuning in last week. I hope you guys have had a good week, got some games in, and I feel like it was kind of a slower news week, which is probably a good thing given the chaos of, the beginning of June and really E3 season, even though E3 doesn't exist and probably won't ever come back again, which I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on about that. Like on one hand, I'm like, yeah, that's good because it's usually just so much chaos. But now I feel like it's even more chaos because everyone still wants to go around that same time. Everyone still wants to come out and say what they got to say, even though some don't even have much to say. So now we have like 15 different live streams that are all drawn out for no real reason, to be honest. Though some people do it right. Anyways, I digress on that. I gotta say, I am utterly exhausted because yesterday we finally finished putting in our backyard. And like, it's just been this long project that we've been working on really kind of like during the weekends, I would say mostly for the past month or so. But this week in particular, I was just out there like every day after work, like doing stuff. So, I mean, like it was just this big like jungle in our backyard full of like weeds and stuff like that. So I had to pull all that stuff out. And then we put it in an irrigation system. And then we stained the fence this week because we had to stain and seal that. And then we tilled it and then put in some sod. And so now I have a nice backyard. It's awesome. I'm super stoked about it, but my gosh, it was so much work. And like yesterday I was out there like all day and just utterly exhausted. It was really warm yesterday too, like mid 80s, which for here is on the warmer side. And yeah, I'm tired, a little sore, but I'm stoked. It's kind of one of those things. And if you have a house or kind of, work on your own projects in that sense that like it's a lot of work, but you're so proud of what you did. Like once it's all said and done. And that goes into, more than just like housework or house chores. I mean, it could just be any kind of creative project or anything like that. So I definitely have that kind of sense of pride and accomplishment with it. But anyways, I managed to get through that. And now we're in a heat wave here in the Pacific Northwest, and it's pretty warm outside. We're in the mid 90s for the next day or two. So trying to stay cool. I'll get out and, get a little sunshine, enjoy the backyard. But either way, it's been a long and busy week for me. But I did manage to get some good gaming in because it was a little bit slower at work for me. So I managed to sneak some game time in, which is always good. And happy about that. So hope you guys got some of that too, and hope you're staying cool out there as we enter into the summer. And hope they have some fun summer plans. Because, maybe some ice cream, go outside, do some golfing, kayaking, whatever you do. Hopefully you get out there and enjoy it. Now, one thing I have to comment on about big news in the U.S. regarding a Supreme Court decision, and I'm not going to get into the details of it, but I want to say, y'all need Jesus in your life. And I mean that sincerely, because also, like, y'all need to get informed, because there's way too many people that are misinformed on the issue and are super emotional about it. And I get it. It's a very emotional topic, but man, it's some of the reactions out there, I think, are a little crazy. And I find it funny that in the gaming industry, a ton of devs, media outlets, etc., all put out the exact same message, verbatim, same font, everything on their social media feeds in response to this. And the only thing I can say is, and you'll wonder why they call you NPCs. If you haven't heard of that term, I encourage you to look it up in the realm of, I guess, politics as well. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I know, like I said, I know it's an emotional topic. It's definitely a heated topic, and everyone's entitled to have their own opinions. But you got to be respectful out there, be empathetic, and don't try to turn it into something it's not. So I'll leave it at that. Now, this is a console gaming podcast. We are going to talk lots of video games. It's not just me talking about my backyard or anything like that. There's just some good video game stuff to talk about, and I think we've got a fun topic today to dive into. But for the uninitiated, the best way you can support the show is to drop a comment or leave a rating. Drop a comment on YouTube if you're listening in on YouTube, or leave a rating on whatever podcast platform you're consuming on. Helps with the algorithms, helps people find the show, puts us up there, and that's very much appreciated if you could do that. Also, you can join me on Locals, the Gamecite Chronicles.locals.com, and that's where I kind of want to start to build a community and take some questions, be more interactive on that platform, because I think it's a really cool platform, a nice alternative platform for creators out there. Check us out on YouTube. I've got tons of my old YouTube videos out there when I used to regularly do that. Now I kind of just do podcasts, obviously, and put out YouTube shorts on the occasion. So check me out over there if you're so inclined, and be sure to subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And remember, new episodes of the show go live each and every week on Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, for this week's show, I thought it would be fun to look at the 2022 exclusives for the rest of the year for each of the three major platforms. So Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch, Nintendo. Because now that we've gotten through, PlayStation, I think, had a state of play recently, and there's been some big news from some of the, about some exclusives coming to PlayStation, though, albeit in 2023. Xbox had their big showcase. We're still kind of waiting on a Nintendo Direct, but they actually just had, I think this past week, a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 focused Direct, which I didn't watch because I'm not going to pretend to be the biggest Xenoblade fan out there. Though, as I've said before on the podcast, that game really intrigues me, and I actually think I'm going to start playing the first one here on Switch here soon. But now that we've kind of, at least at this point right now, we've kind of got some insight into what the rest of the year looks like, though I still think there's quite a bit of mystery out there. We'll dive into that. I thought it would be fun to let's look at the games and compare each of the platforms in terms of exclusives for the rest of the year. So we'll dive into that, but I also wanted to talk about that Final Fantasy VII anniversary stream. Now, I know this happened a little over a week ago. I'm a little late to this one, but I'm just catching up to it, and there was some big news announced from it that I'm pretty excited about. So we'll cover that as well. But before we get into that, let's talk about the games that I'm playing. Now remember, I want to hear from you guys, so please, each and every week, write in to the show, either drop a comment on YouTube, hit me up on Twitter, whatever, write in, let me know what games you're playing. I want to incorporate and get you guys into the show and share some of that stuff, because I think it's so cool and it's such a fun topic to discuss and see what people are playing out there, because there's more games than you could possibly imagine out there, and it's so fun to see what people are enjoying and diving into. So, for me, what have I been playing? I've actually been playing quite a few games. 3 different games this week that I got through. And that's pretty good. Pretty good for me. So, first up, as I mentioned last week, I started Assassin's Creed Origin DLC, The Hidden Ones, and I actually finished this DLC up, played through it. Upon completion, I was probably around the 8 to 9 hours mark. You can beat this DLC in probably about 5 hours if you just kind of beeline through it and just do the main quest. But I did some side quests. I did some exploring in this new area and stuff like that. So kind of took my time with it, and I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. The last few missions I felt were pretty good. And as I mentioned last week, talking about the DLC, I didn't really feel like there was much of a narrative to the main quests. But the last few missions kind of tie it up. And again, you're kind of just helping the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood kind of get off the ground in this new area. And it kind of picked up on that element towards the last few missions, and I thought it was pretty solid. And it's definitely, this DLC is definitely a great continuation of the main game's story, which I'm not going to dive into that. I encourage you to play it. I think Assassin's Creed Origins is absolutely awesome. So it's more Assassin's Creed Origins in this first DLC for the hidden ones, and I think that is a good thing. Totally a good thing. So I had fun with it. I enjoyed my time with it. I definitely want to get back to it because the second expansion is it's called the Curse of Pharaohs, and I think this is a bigger expansion. I want to say when I looked it up on howlongtobeat.com, it said it's about 12 and a half hours, I think, for the main story. So I know the area is bigger as well, so there's much more to do. But I want to get back to it because I do enjoy Assassin's Creed Origins, but I kind of wanted to get into a couple other games as well. So I beat the Hidden Ones DLC, set that one aside, and moved on. I moved on to TMNT Shredder's Revenge. And I mentioned this game last week saying I wanted to dive into it. I did dive into it. And I beat the story mode, and I played it for about 3 hours or so. It's a small game. It's a beat 'em up. You can play through the story pretty quickly. The stages are pretty short and sweet too. But this game is freaking awesome. It is so good. I loved it so much. I really, really did. It's such an ode to the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, like the arcade games from back in the day, as well as the 90s cartoon. Like the intro to the game is basically a redid version, almost shot for shot, of the intro to the 90s cartoon. And they have the same song, like it's the same lyrics and kind of melody to the song. It's a slightly different version, a newer rendition of it, but it's all essentially the same. I mean, it's basically the 90s cartoon, and that is so awesome. Like, maybe I'm aging myself here a little bit, but as a kid who grew up during the 90s and was a huge Ninja Turtles fan, loved Ninja Turtles, watched the cartoon regularly. Like, this is so it just hit the nostalgia for me. And it's so cool to see this reborn again in, modern context, modern times through this game. I loved it. I absolutely love that. And there's various bosses through kind of as you go through the stages that are characters from the cartoon. And I remember kind of playing through it, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that character. Or, oh yeah, I remember that character. And it's so cool just to see that. And I just couldn't help but smile as I'm playing through this game. The other thing that's awesome about this game is the art style. So it's kind of got that 16-bit pixel art style, and it's very well done, very detailed, great looking characters, bright colors. It's such an awesome and beautiful looking game. So shout out to Tribute Games. Those are the guys that did that. And actually, Tribute Games also did another game that I talked about on the show that I played fairly recently called Panzer Paladin. And while I had some issues with the second half of that game, it's still a good game. And so this is just the more awesome work from that team. So shout out to you guys at Tribute Games. You're doing some good shit over there. Now, I played part of this game solo, I'm not a big multiplayer guy, but I played part of it solo, which is fun, and it's fine. But then I just hopped online, joined with some randos, and played the rest of the kind of campaign that way. And it was great. It was awesome. And it gets really chaotic because you can have up to 6 players on screen playing at the same time. And at one point I did that, and it was just chaos, just pure chaos. Like almost to the point where like you lose your character, but because there's so much going on screen. And one of the neat things I think this game does is it scales with you. So as you add in more players, there's more and more enemies, and they're a little more difficult. Or if you're playing solo, it kind of scales back to that where there's it's manageable. So that was nice as well. Now I got to say I'm not particularly good at beat 'em ups. This isn't like a big genre that I'm super into. And I don't have much to compare it to, but I thought it was well done. It was fun. There's different kind of move sets and abilities and stuff like that. It's limited, so it's not overbearing, I guess, for kind of newcomers, I would say, like myself. But there's enough, I think, to kind of sink your teeth into and some fun moves to do with each of the characters. So I liked it. I think this game is absolutely fantastic. I kind of want to go back. I did play it on Xbox through Game Pass, so it is on Game Pass. If you're a subscriber there, you can download it and try it, and I highly encourage you do because it's so good. And honestly, probably one of the better games of this year. I just think it's very well done. Like candidly, it's very well done. Maybe that's nostalgia. Maybe that's nostalgia bias from me, but I think this is a good game. And so, yeah, go try it out. I highly encourage it. Go try it out. I think it's well done, and I think it's worth your time. It's not a long game either. So, like I said, though, I do want to go back and maybe clean up some of those achievements, and just have some more fun with it. But TMNT Shredder's Revenge, go play it, people. And then after that, since I'd beat that game, I decided to get back into Dying Light 2. And I don't have much more to say about this game. I've kind of talked about this game at length on the podcast and some of the earlier episodes of the podcast, but I do want to finish this game and move on from it, just because I kind of want to just check the box and say, okay, I've played through this game. My feelings are essentially the same about it as I've gotten back into it, and I'm kind of just going through the main quest line now. I'm kind of over it. Just again, like I got with Kingdoms of Amalur, I just kind of want to see it through. So I'm doing that. I will say, this morning actually, I got through one of the main missions, and I gotta say so I think it's Rosario Dawson, who's one of the main characters in the game, and they've kind of marketed her as like the main, one of the staple characters that you interact with in the game. And got a little backstory on her character. Again, I'm not going to get into it here, but it kind of got a little interesting. And so I think things are starting to get interesting where I'm like, okay, I kind of want to see where this is going to go. So from that perspective, I'm intrigued. Kind of want to see it through. So Dying Light 2, hopefully I can get through that game, have more to say about it next week. But that's what I've been playing. Now, let's dive into the Final Fantasy VII 25th anniversary stream. So this was about a 14 to 15 minute, maybe 14 and a half minutes little live stream video that they did. I think it was a live stream, and then I just found their video on their website and just watched through it. And celebrate 25 years of Final Fantasy VII since that game came out back in 1997. And I gotta say, just thinking about that makes me feel so old. Because I remember when Final Fantasy VII came out, and I remember like that was the game. That was the game to have on the PlayStation. And that was why I wanted a PlayStation 1. And I'm pretty like, it's a little vague because it's been so long, but I remember kind of toggling back between N64 and PlayStation 1. But I have vivid memories of Final Fantasy VII. Like that, I remember I had the strategy guide, and I was just begging my parents to I want a PlayStation and Final Fantasy VII. Like, this is what I want. And I remember that on Christmas, and I can't remember if it was in 1997 that year or the next year, but I remember that Christmas. I mean, that's what I wanted. PlayStation 1 with Final Fantasy VII. And I remember opening up a present, and lo and behold, there it is. The game, Final Fantasy VII, the disc. And my mom told me like sorry, like that was just kind of a placeholder gift. Like we're gonna have to take it back and exchange it because I didn't have a PlayStation at the time. So I think they forgot to take that out of the presents. So I was kind of bummed, and parents do that sometimes. But then, after all the presents are opened, if I remember correctly, there was a note, and I went on this scavenger hunt for one last present. And lo and behold, inside of because we were at my grandma's house, inside of my grandma's dryer, once I kind of at the end, was a PlayStation 1. And I'm pretty sure it was like the Costco pack or whatever, because it was like the PlayStation, I think it had a controller and maybe like a game or something. But there it was. I got my PlayStation. I had Final Fantasy VII. Oh, man, that's like one of my most fond Christmas memories. Like, I think every kid who's into video games kind of grows up, and they have that one Christmas where they got the game or they got the console that they wanted. And that one sticks out to me the most. Yeah, probably out of all of them, just because like that was it, man. I finally got it. And I remember playing through that game. Such a special game. And I really loved it. So it's just crazy to reminisce on that 25 years of Final Fantasy VII. So the celebration stream, I want to go through each of the announcements, share some thoughts on it. So it opens up with the announcement that Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is coming to PC via Steam on June 17th. Now, obviously, it's past June 17th, so it's already out on PC. You guys can play it. Again, this is a console gaming podcast because I'm not into PC gaming. But if you are a PC gamer, you go enjoy that game because it is freaking awesome. It is a fantastic game. The remake is very well done. So go play that. And if you don't play on PC and you haven't played it on PlayStation, either PS4 or PS5, go play it. It's good. It's very, very good. And it looks good too. It's very good. Very beautiful. They also decided to point out that on Steam, Final Fantasy VII Remake is compatible with Steam Deck. So you can play Final Fantasy VII on the go. So, that's kind of cool. This whole Steam Deck thing is actually really interesting. And for me personally, I kind of feel like it's one of those fads where, you're going to see all the influencers, the Twitch streamers, the YouTubers and stuff. They're all going to do their unboxings and, their promotions and talking about how much they love the Steam Deck. But I feel like over time, it's just going to kind of wane off. Like it'll just kind of fade away into the distance, just be this kind of fad thing. I don't know. It's really interesting. But I know that the handheld space there's Nintendo has like no competition. The Vita is gone. It's been dead for a long time. Rest in peace, Vita. I don't think PlayStation's getting back into the handheld space. I know there's the mobile market that's alive and kicking, but I think people want more than that. I think there's a core audience in there that play, core video games. I put myself in that category that they don't want to play games on their phones. They don't like the touchscreen. And I know there's accessories for mobile games and all that stuff, but they don't want to bother with that. I think that's why the Switch is the kind of the perfect solution. So with the Steam Deck, especially having access to the Steam library and I think the majority of those games are compatible with the Steam Deck. It's really interesting. So I'll be curious to see how it plays out, but I am kind of the mindset that it's kind of this fad, and I don't know. We'll see if Valve also kind of continues in that space. But after that, they kind of went into this little montage to show off some merchandise that they're selling to celebrate Final Fantasy VII Anniversary. Things like statues, accessories, etc. Nothing really of note there. Then they went into mobile games. And again, not a big mobile gamer. And I think I've talked about this in the past on the podcast. But they showed off that Final Fantasy VII, the First Soldier mobile game. And I think this is that multiplayer one. Maybe it's a battle royale of some sort, but it's, a multiplayer, competitive, shooter type game. And there's season 3 content. So they went through the season 3 content with new weapons, characters, all that stuff. And I gotta be honest, I didn't even know this game was out. I didn't even know this was out on iOS and Android. I thought we were still waiting for that. So if you play that, you have season 3 content to look forward to. I generally think it looks kind of neat, but I don't like playing games on my phone. I don't like touch controls. I just, like, when I think of video games, I don't think, let me get out my phone and pop in a game. Like, if that was on Switch or something like that, yeah, I'd be inclined to go play it. So, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. And then after that, they moved to the other mobile game called Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and they showed off kind of this lengthy trailer. And this is more of like a traditional single-player RPG, it seems like, with the story and all that. It's got Cloud, Sephiroth. I think Zack's in there from Crisis Core. I think. I don't know. I'm not super up to speed with the story of Final Fantasy VII outside of the original Final Fantasy VII game because I didn't play any of the other stuff. So it's got that. They've got a closed beta for that game sometime this year in 2022. But I got to say, this looks pretty cool for a mobile game, and the graphics are actually pretty well done too. It kind of has like the world view is because you're navigating through different areas and stuff like that. It's kind of got that almost chibi style. But then you get into the battles and some of the cutscenes, and then it's like, okay, these have amazing graphics. So kind of interesting from that regard. But it could be cool. I don't know. I'll kind of wait and see on it. Again, I'm not the mobile gamer, but if it's something that's super compelling and it's probably going to have, story that's going to tie into the game and the remakes, it might be worth your time there. So, I don't know. Check that out. I think it looks pretty cool. And then they announced a shocking game I don't think anyone really saw coming, is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion is the title. And this is basically a remaster, because it's not a really well done remaster, I gotta say, of the PSP game from, I don't know, the 2000s or something like that. But this is a huge upgrade. I mean, these graphics are insane. Like, when you look at screenshots from the PSP version to this new version that's coming out, it's pretty spectacular. They did a really good job. And so this is coming this winter to, I think, all platforms. I think it's coming to Xbox, coming to, obviously, PlayStation and Switch, if I'm not mistaken. So that's pretty cool. I gotta say, that is pretty freaking cool. Now, I never played Crisis Core on the PSP. I mean, I have a PSP, and my PSP games are all in a box right now, stored away, but I can't remember if I ever bought Crisis Core. I know I bought the original Final Fantasy on my PSP, and I played through that. And I think I have Final Fantasy Tactics on PSP, but I don't think if I ever got Crisis Core. But I remember that was a pretty popular PSP game. It just didn't really, I think, appeal to me at the time. So I don't have any experience with this game, but in kind of watching this gameplay trailer and seeing it, I got to say, I think it looks awesome. I think it looks really well done. So I'm looking forward to this quite a bit. And so coming winter, that could mean, holiday, Christmas time, or it could mean early 2023. But I'm getting the feeling that maybe we're looking at like a November release date, something like that. Maybe before the holiday time comes around. But it looks awesome, man. I gotta say, it looks really, really cool. And I don't remember what the combat was in the original Crisis Core on the PSP. I mean, I would assume turn-based, but maybe not. And now it looks like it has that combat from the Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's kind of that, I don't even, it's real time, but you can kind of slow down time. And there's still a lot of strategy to it in terms of like using your spells and potions and kind of switching characters and stuff like that. The combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake is really, really awesome, especially for kind of taking that turn base from the original game and kind of modernizing it, but still keeping the strategic elements of it. I think is very well done. And I get the same sense here that we're going to have similar style of combat in this Crisis Core game. I could be wrong, though, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going off what I saw from the trailer. So very much looking forward to that, though. And then after that, they closed the stream with, which is probably an obvious announcement, but the second part to the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it's called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And this is part 2 of what will be a trilogy for the remake games. So it announced, I think long ago, that the Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to come in multiple parts. We now know and can officially confirm that it's going to be a total of 3 parts. So we have Final Fantasy VII Remake, the first one, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and then an unknown third title that will wrap it all up. And they showed off, new trailer. It's like 2 minutes or so long. And I don't want to spoil Final Fantasy VII Remake for those who haven't played it, but I will say this. From what I'm seeing, from what I know of playing the first game, and from what I'm seeing in this trailer for part 2, I have a feeling this next game is going to really go off the rails and kind of deviate significantly from the first game. Now, I don't think this is a spoiler, and I think a lot of people already know this already, but the first game ends kind of when you leave the Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII. And from what I see in the trailer, like I don't know where we're going per se, but it just seems like shit's about to get really, really weird in this game. Really, really weird. And I love it. So this game, they said, is going to come out in winter, next winter. So presumably winter in 2023. So we've got a, year and a half to wait for it. But I am very much looking forward to it. Now, one thing I really hope, actually 2 things I hope they have in this game. First is exploration. Like, Midgar was pretty contained in the first game. and fairly linear, I would say, which, to be fair, I think is pretty consistent with the original. But in part 2, I kind of want more openness to be able to kind of explore a little bit, because there's some really cool locales you can kind of start going to in once you get out of Midgar. So I would love to see that. Second, I really hope they bring some of those other characters as playable characters in this second part. Now, there was kind of some controversy that I think his name Red 13, the kind of wolf in the game that you meet towards the end of Midgar, isn't playable in the remake. And there was a little bit of controversy around that because he's a party member in your team in the original game. So I really hope they bring more characters in that you can have in your party and play as. So that's like one of the biggest things I want to see in this second part. But man, I gotta say, I they got something here with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I think with the success of the first game, I think they've got a lot to live up to with part 2. But if the quality's there and they maintain the direction that they're going, I think we're in for a treat. I gotta say. Now, overall, I gotta say, fun little showcase. Nice way to celebrate 25 years of Final Fantasy VII. Definitely some exciting announcements. Like, I didn't see Crisis Core coming. And, part 2 of Final Fantasy VII Remake looks awesome. If you're a fan of the mobile games, you got those to look forward to. So some cool announcements, I gotta say. Some exciting stuff to look forward to. And it kind of reminds me that I really need to go back and play that Yuffie DLC in Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. But I can't remember, because I have the PS4 version, and I believe you can upgrade the PS4 version rather than kind of rebuy the game, and then you can get access to the DLC. I can't remember specifically how to do that or what the cost is. I need to look into that, because I remember they made it really confusing, which so stupid. I don't understand why they do some of that stuff, but I've heard the DLC is really good, so it's kind of making me want to go play that. And I know it's not super long, but I've heard it, it's good. So I want to play it because I really enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Remake. So maybe I'll dive into that. We'll see. We shall see. But I don't know. Exciting stuff from Square Enix, and doing some good things, especially amongst some of the bad stuff that they've done this year. So now let's dive into exclusives for Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. And so I thought this would be fun because we're coming off the heels of the Xbox showcase, and PlayStation had a state of play, like a third-party state of play. I think it was early June. We're still waiting on that Nintendo Direct, but we've had some earlier this year and have some insight into what Nintendo's got planned for 2022, or the rest of 2022, I should say. My gosh. Struggling with that one. But what I did is I grabbed, for the best of my abilities, based on what I could find online, for each of the platform, the exclusives that we know are coming out for 2022, confirmed. Well, mostly confirmed, I should say. There are a few others that don't have a specific window there, but they still say 2022. So I picked out those games, and we'll go through each of the platforms, their exclusives. I'll probably share my thoughts a little bit on each of the games, because, why not? It's my podcast. I'll do what I want. And then once we get through that, I want to kind of compare, give some pros and cons around each, and share what I think about each of these. Because it's funny when you talk, especially if you're looking on Twitter, man, the console wars are nasty on there, and you just get people saying stuff for clout. That's all it is. And when you talk about consoles, that's one of the drawing factors, right? Is exclusives. What are the exclusive games you can only play on that platform? And that's usually what gets people in the door. Now, obviously there's services that have come into play that add value. And there's obviously, controller preference, maybe UI preference, form factor. There are other factors out there, but I think generally speaking, the number one thing people look for when they figure out which platform they're going to play on, it's exclusives. And that's why I think this would be fun to dive into and kind of take a look at the landscape for the rest of 2022 as we know it at the time of this recording. Now, I also want to preface this. Of course, this is subjective. Once we kind of, as I start to share my thoughts and we kind of, wrap it up and pick out which platform has maybe the most compelling lineup of games, yeah, that's going to be subjective. But I'm going to try to provide some objective insights and kind of provide just some facts out there, in hopes that now you can make a decision and let me know either in the comments or on Twitter which platform you think has the best lineup for the rest of the year. So, the lineups. Let's start with Xbox. So, Xbox, they've got this game called Naraka Blade Point, which I think they showed this off at their showcase. That comes out June 23rd. And this is that, I actually think I misquoted this in the last episode when we talked about the showcase. But this is actually, it's a mobile game that's now coming over to Xbox and I think PC. But it's a battle royale. And I didn't realize that. And I think it's popular in China, if I'm not mistaken. So they got that game. Then they got that story-driven game, that As Dusk Falls, that has that really unique comic or graphic novel style of art. Looks really interesting there. And lots of different choices, stuff like that. Think of like Until Dawn or that newest game that came out, The Quarry. Seems kind of on par with that, just with a very different art style. That comes out July 19th. Then they have Somerville, which comes out sometime in 2022. And Somerville actually looks pretty cool. If I remember correctly, I'm going to look this up just to be on the safe side. So let's see. According to Steam, they have a nice... In the wake of catastrophe, you must find means to make your family whole again. Somerville is a sci-fi adventure grounded in the intimate repercussions of a large-scale conflict. So I think you're kind of it's like 2D. You're traversing these wild landscapes. Almost kind of reminds you of like Limbo or Inside in terms of gameplay, like puzzle platforming, kind of the perspective and ambiance as well. So I actually think this one looks really awesome. I remember seeing it and I was like, okay, this looks pretty cool. So that comes out hopefully, sometime this year. It's still slated for 2022. We haven't heard otherwise, but I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Then Valheim, I think maybe is how you say that. And I believe this game's out on PC, but it's coming to Xbox sometime in 2022. Though when I was looking this game up, the wiki still says 2023. So I don't know what's going on here, but either way, I know Xbox on that infographic they shared of your games 2022 and 2023, Valheim's on there for 2022. So that's supposedly when we'll get it. And then Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, which is that first-person Warhammer game. That actually looks pretty cool if it's the one I'm thinking of, I gotta say. I'm not a big Warhammer guy. I know nothing of that franchise. But when I saw that, I was like, okay, this actually might be really fun to play through. That comes out September 13th, and I'd completely forgotten about this game too, by the way. So that's exciting. And then Grounded from Obsidian, finally, the official version of that game comes out July 28th. I've shared my thoughts on that game. They still stand. If you're curious on that, listen to the last episode of the podcast. Then that game High on Life, which they showed on their showcase, that comes out October 25th. And that game, I don't know, man. That game just looks weird to me, and I don't know who that's for, but I'm sure it'll find some form of audience. And then Scorn, which I think a lot of people are interested in because it's that kind of horror exclusive on Xbox. That's still coming out October 2022. Still don't have a day, but sometime in October, which makes sense for being a horror game. And then another Obsidian game, Pentiment, which is that kind of detective game that in like medieval times, that really interesting art style. They showed this one off in the showcase. I think this one actually looks pretty interesting. I might try it out when it comes out in November of 2022. So again, no official day, but sometime in November. And then Slime Rancher 2 is another one on there sometime in 2022. So quite a few games. I gotta say, and a couple of ones that I'm actually pretty interested in, if I'm being completely honest. Now, for PlayStation, and believe it or not, this is actually a pretty short list, at least from what I could find. So if I missed something, please, by all means, let me know. We have Stray, which is that weird cat game that I think quite a few people actually seem to be interested in. It seems to be talked about quite a bit. And, it's funny because it seems like a lot of gamers, for one reason or another, have cats. Like they're into cats for some reason. I don't know what it is, but especially a lot of like the female gamers or Twitch streamers and stuff like that, they all have cats. They got their cats on stream. They're laying on their desk. Even a lot of male gamers, those nerd guys out there, all have cats. I don't know what it is with video gamers and cats, but they love cats. And I think that's why a lot of people are talking about Stray. So, I don't know. To me, I don't think this game looks interesting at all. But maybe it's awesome. We'll see. We'll see when it comes out, July 19th. Then we have The Last of Us Part 1, which that's a remake. I'm going to play it, though, because I love The Last of Us, and the graphics look pretty amazing. That comes out September 2nd. Then you have Forspoken, which, as I've mentioned in the past, this game just does not look interesting to me whatsoever. But that, maybe it comes out and it's awesome. That may change. And I kind of feel that way right now about Ghostwire Tokyo. I'm actually kind of intrigued. I want to dive into that game. So, yeah, we have that. And then God of War Ragnarok. We don't have a release date for this one. It's been reiterated, I think, by multiple sources and even some of the devs that it's coming out in 2022. So I put that one on here. And that's it. That's all I could find for the rest of 2022 on the PlayStation side, which I was actually kind of surprised about, if I'm being completely honest. And then we have the Nintendo Switch. So for Switch, we have Mario Strikers Battle League. That came out June 10th. So it's out. Y'all can be playing your Mario Soccer if you want. We have that game called Neon White, which I think is pretty popular or has been talked about on PC, but it's also on Switch. And let's see, how do they describe this game? Because it looks really interesting. So Neon White is a first-person shooter and puzzle platforming game. So there you go. You're trying to get through levels and stuff like that. The art style is really unique too. I gotta say, it looks pretty interesting. So check it out. I know that's out for the Switch. That came out June 16th. And then just came out, what is this? Yesterday, as the day I'm recording, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, out June 24th. I think that's a pretty big game. A lot of Fire Emblem fans will enjoy. A game I'm looking forward to very, very much. Live I'll Live. Gosh, I keep burping into the microphone. But Live I'll Live is that RPG. First time it's ever coming to the West, July 22nd, and I am day one. I'm buying and diving into that game. I will drop everything for that. I'm super interested in that game. I want to play it. And then a big one, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a week later on July 29th. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. Then we have Splatoon 3 on September 9th. Also another one I'm looking forward to. I love Splatoon, and being able to get into a new Splatoon game, play the I love, this is one of the few games that I absolutely just love and adore the multiplayer. And the salmon run, I think, will be really fun in this one as well. So I'm going to be all about that Splatoon, let me tell you. And Nintendo, I know you don't listen to me, but we need more amiibos. We need Splatoon 3 amiibos. Make it happen. Please. Make it happen. After that, we've got Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So the new, Gen 9 Pokemon, if I'm not mistaken. Comes out November 18th. And I gotta say, I'm not the biggest Pokemon fan these days. As a kid, like that for Red and Blue, loved them. I was all about it. Dude, I even played like the Pokemon trading card game. And funny story about that, actually, if I could divulge you guys, if that's even the right word for that, I don't know. But Pokemon trading card game, I was super into it. And at my local Toys R Us, I think once a week they would have, because that's where you could go and get your Pokemon cards. They would have like Pokemon card tournaments. And if you beat, I think, certain people, you could earn badges. And I remember earning, I think, 2 badges at this, little Pokemon League at my Toys R Us, and I'm so bummed because I don't know what happened to those badges. They were like legit lapel badges, and I had them in this case, just like, I got this little case, and I had them in this case, just like they did in the cartoon, when Ash had his badges and stuff like that. And I have no idea what happened to them. And I know I'm missing my Pokemon cards too, because I had some, like I know they're super valuable these days, but like the OG Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, I had all those, and I don't know where they are. And I'm pretty sure my mom didn't get rid of them. So they're probably somewhere in her house, like buried. But either way, that's just a fond memory I have of Pokemon. So I was super into Pokemon. And I don't know, maybe this game will get me back into it. We'll see when it comes out on November 18th. After that, I put Bayonetta 2 on here because it's still slated for 2022, even though, I'll be honest, this one I'm still skeptical on because I know that game. Platinum Games, I think, has not done very well. They're in a rough spot here recently, and I think Bayonetta 3 has had some development woes. But from everywhere I can see, it still says 2022. So we'll see about that one. And then Advanced Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. I put this on here because I think it's still, I know it was delayed indefinitely because it was supposed to come out April of this year. And then for some reason, Nintendo delayed it when the whole Ukraine invasion happened, or Russian invasion of Ukraine, I should say. So I imagine it'll be released sometime later this year. I mean, the game's ready, right? It's just a matter of when they want to release it. So yeah, those are the games that are coming out that I could find from Nintendo Switch. So in counting these, and again, assuming that all of those 2022 games, and I put 2022 in quotes where they don't have like a window or specific date, assuming all that stuff comes out, Xbox has 10 exclusives for the rest of the year. PlayStation has 4, and Switch has 8. And we're not talking indie exclusives or anything like that. These are like the big, AAA mainstream titles. So I got to say, I was actually surprised at how many Xbox has. I think that's a surprising amount of exclusives. And it's funny because, and I'm guilty of this too, a lot of people criticize Xbox for exclusives, lack of exclusives, primarily from the first parties, because not all of those are first party games. A lot of those are second and third parties where they've bought exclusivity. But touche. I mean, I got to give props where props are due. I think Xbox is bringing content, though I will say this. If you compare those games on that list to PlayStation and Switch, there's a quality difference. I mean, I'm gonna pick on High on Life. Like, really? Like, that's an interesting game, but that's not gonna be like a top tier, everyone's talking about a game. It'll be another Medium, or Medium was an Xbox exclusive when that game came out from Bloober Team, and it kind of just came and went, sitting in kind of that meddling Metacritic score. I think Scorn will be the same way, to be honest. I still don't know what that game's about, but I don't know. I mean, is there a lot of buzz? Is there a lot of hype around this game? Does it really look like top tier quality? Nah, not really, in my opinion. Now, there's some cool games on Xbox coming out. As I mentioned, I think Somerville looks awesome, but I don't think that's going to be like a Game of the Year contender or anything like that. Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, I think that looks freaking cool. But again, we're not talking about, an 85, 90 on the, 90 plus on the Metacritic. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not seeing anything of like high quality AAA games. And, but that's, again, not a bad thing. And I know there's games on there that people are going to be stoked and excited for. And I still think that if you're more of a multiplayer guy, yeah, you're going to, maybe Grounded's the game for you. And that's what you're looking forward to. That's okay. That's awesome. Good on you, man. I hope you enjoy that game, and I hope it's everything you want it to be. But what I'm saying is, if you just kind of compare these games, I'm not seeing the top tier quality on the Xbox side when you compare it to PlayStation and Switch based on those games that we just reviewed. But Xbox does have a surprising amount of games. So I want to give them credit there, because I was surprised when putting this list together. Now, the interesting thing about PlayStation, they only got 4 that we know of that are confirmed, right? But the interesting thing with PlayStation that I feel compelled to point out is that outside of the few other games are coming in 2023, like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, or Rebirth, Final Fantasy 16, and I feel like there's another one that I can't think of off the top of my head, but outside of those games that we know are coming in 2023, we have no idea what's coming up. We know that, Factions, that was the other one, Factions. So we know that Sony's talked about putting out, 10 live service games by like 2025 or something like that. So we know there's some of those in the works. We know, obviously Spider-Man 2, Wolverine are in the works, but I don't think we'll see those games anytime soon. I mean, Spider-Man, maybe the end of next year, but even then, I still feel like it's too soon. So, we know that, but there's a lot of studios in the first party lineup that we don't know. We don't know what they're working on. So I think the mystery and intrigue of what is brewing over on the PlayStation side is compelling. I think it's really interesting. I think the other thing to note is that PlayStation has already had plenty of exclusives launch this year in the first quarter. So they've had, obviously, Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, Sifu is a console exclusive, Babylon's Fall, though that game has flopped, and then the Uncharted Legacy Thieves Edition, that collection on the PlayStation 5. So they've had some really good games launch out on this first half of 2022. So you do have to take that into consideration. Though I know we're talking about what's left for 2022. So I just thought it was interesting and I kind of wanted to point that out. So who knows, if Sony's got, an ace up their sleeve for the rest of this year. Well, only time will tell. We'll see. That's not to say there's not games to play. I mean, outside of these exclusive, there's some awesome games coming out this year. Like we got Saints Row. I think that looks pretty cool. The Callisto Protocol, which I'm super looking forward to. Obviously, if you're a Call of Duty fan, new Call of Duty fan, or new Call of Duty game, and so on. Like there's no shortage of games that are coming out this year across all platforms. Now the Nintendo side, this one looks strong. And I was surprised in putting this list together because there's some bangers in there. I mean, Mario Strikers, I don't care about soccer whatsoever, but every Mario soccer game seems to do very well, and I know a lot of people are excited about it. So I think that's a big one. Fire Emblem's a pretty big franchise for Nintendo, especially after Three Houses. And those Muso games seem to do pretty well for folks. So I think that'll be a banger. I'm super excited for Live I'll Live. But then you have some big ones. Like obviously Pokemon's going to be huge, right? That one's awesome. Splatoon 3 I think will do well. Xenoblade Chronicles seems to be pretty big for Nintendo as well. So, and then if Bayonetta 3 comes out, I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. So that's pretty solid, man. Like that's a lot of bangers coming out for the rest of this year. And let's not forget, Nintendo has also already released a couple of big games in early 2022 with Pokemon Arceus, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and Triangle Strategy, just to name a couple that I could find. That's pretty good, man. That's a really good 2022 if all that comes out. Dude, like you Switch fans are eating good. So out of all these lists though, I'm compelled to say I think Switch has the most compelling lineup of games. In terms of quality and diversity, I just think Nintendo Switch has got a really good lineup. They got the sports game that I think a lot of people are going to like. They've got an RPG. They've got a multiplayer game. Pokemon. I mean, it's Pokemon. People eat that stuff up. And then some kind of niche games like Live I'll Live, Advance Wars if that comes out, Bayonetta 3 if that comes out. I don't know, man. I just think when I look at these lists, I'm just like, I'm a PlayStation guy, right? I've said that before on the podcast. I have a preference towards PlayStation, and they tend to put out the games that I like. I'm super looking forward to Last of Us Part 1. I love that game. I'll play through it again. I'll happily support it. Obviously, I think God of War Ragnarok is going to be good. It's going to be probably very, very good. I don't really care about Stray or Forspoken. So outside of that, I'm like, okay, they've got some games for me. And then on the Xbox side, they've got some interesting games, but again, I'm just not seeing that like earth-shattering quality. So compare that to Switch. I'm like Switch has got it going. I just really feel like they got it going this year. So that's what I think about the exclusive games coming to each platform for the rest of this year. Let me know what you guys think. down in the comments below. A little bit, honestly, a little bit longer of a podcast than I thought we'd go on, reaching an hour. Definitely shorter than last week's when I ranted on. So that'll do it for this week's show. Lots to look forward to, I think, for the rest of the year. And if you're a Final Fantasy fan, something to look forward to on no matter what platform you're on with Crisis Core. So I'm excited. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hope you guys enjoyed the topic, the conversation. Again, as always, best way to support the show, drop a comment on YouTube, leave a rating on the podcast platform you're listening on. It certainly helps out with the show. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. Let me know what you think about the show, what games you're looking forward to for the rest of this year, and all the rest. Thank you again for your love, kindness, and support of the show. I enjoy doing this each and every week, just kind of talking to the microphone, putting my thoughts in the video game ether out there on the internet. And again, as much as I can, I want to incorporate you guys into the show. So let's make it as interactive as possible. So feel free to interact with me through all the social medias. Very much appreciated. Hope you guys stay safe, do well out there, stay cool as we enter into the summer months and things start to heat up. And we'll talk to you next week. Until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I'll see you online.